Hello again, everyone. So last time we covered functions, and in the last part of the last part of the lecture, we covered a very special function that was the motivation for the topic of this video here. And the function was essentially calculating the total price based on the state. If your state is Vermont, say, then you have a tax rate of this. And then if you live somewhere else, this again, the function that we did was much more comprehensive than this one. Probably checked for different states like state of Massachusetts and state of Vermont. But the idea here is not to show you a full account of the function that we've done last time. I want to show you something special about this function. The idea was essentially to produce something that returns a value here, and then we're gonna test it. And I want to show you what we do here. So by calling the price of an item, say $5, and the quantity, say 10 pieces, and our state is Vermont, then we're gonna have the total price like that. And the total price here will be different based on the state that you enter. So let me show you here, and we can run this like that. And so basically showed me that I have clearly something is not right here. So the tax rate is the total before, right? So this is the tax, and then the total before plus the tax value here gives me the total, because I returned the total before, not the total after. So there was a little bug here that I'm glad that we figured it out. Now we probably have to see a different number. Now it is indeed a different number. But as you can see, if I enter a different state, and I'm going to copy these two lines again, just to make a quick progress here. So say I'm going to do the state of Massachusetts, and my state here is going, the state tax here is going to be 15% because it's not the state of Vermont. So this is probably going to be 57.5. Okay, so as you can see, when you get only a single number like that, it might not be sufficient for the information that you want to learn. What we covered last time, that we also said, well, maybe perhaps I also would like to know the state that I'm calculating the total price based upon, or what I'm doing the purchases in. And this way we were able to produce more than we were able to return two different values as a return type. And we actually talked about how we receive them, and the way we said that we receive them is going to be based on the pattern here. So we have to exactly get them in a way as we are returning, as the function is returning the value, is going to be returning two values. So this is going to be my state like that. And any variable here has no bearing on the variable here, because this is considered the local variable. So now if I want to print my state here like that, like this, and I do that, as you can see, let's just uncomment this one first. So as you can see, I am getting two pieces of information. The first piece of the total after tax, and I also know that I made the purchase in the state of Vermont. That's why I get this value here. Now let me do the same thing for the state of Massachusetts. Current state. And I am going to print this guy here, current state. So now I'm going to see two different print statements. The first one coming from the first state, which is Vermont. The second one is coming from the state of Massachusetts here. So I'm going to see two different states. Indeed, as you can see here, I am able to see the purchases and the total after tax, and I'm also able to see that the state that I'm working with is what state that I'm working with. And as you can see, this part here is very significant. What if I replace these two variables by one variable, even though the function is actually returning two different values? Let me show you here. So here is we can call this the price state pair, like that, and it's still a single variable. So how do I get the actual values of this versus that, versus the total after, versus as opposed to the state? So remember last time we actually used this single variable here, and we used the device that is the index, and we replaced these guys, the variable names here, by a single variable, and now we have to access it here like that. And this is going to be index number 1, and I'm going to copy this thing again here so I can show you. And if I go here, this is going to give me exactly the two pieces of information that I'm seeing here, even though this function here is getting a single variable, but this variable is not just, it is comprised of two different pieces. It's not just a single variable with a single value. No, this is a variable that has two different values inside. And as you can see, we can actually put a really nice message here. I'm going to call it price, oopsies, like that. And I'm just going to make a space here. And I'm going to put this guy in here. So they look different from this. So we know that this is now, if we run it, we know it is for sure coming from here, as you can see for sure. So the pairs that I have is the price after tax and the state. Okay, this is exactly what we saw last time. So as you can see that this value here, or this variable here, is not just a single variable with just one type of value. It's actually comprised of two different values. The first one is a float, because 57.5 is a float, and 55 is indeed also a float. And the second part of the variable is also another variable of a type string. So last time, let me also remind you, we actually wanted to understand what kind of variable that is. And I remember that I also printed the type of that variable, and that was indeed the motivation that we used to come to this point here today. So type of complex variable. I want to know what kind of variable that I'm working with, and how to use it in a different scenario. That as soon as I right now, as soon as I'm done with this, I will show you how to use this complex scenario here. So indeed, instead of returning more than one variable here, we can instead of returning a single variable, we can return more than one variable. And as you're receiving them, you can package these two guys together in another variable that is complex, that is also comprised of these two guys together like that. And this offers me a new type of data structure, a new type of variable that is complex, that is comprised of more than one value, not just the state, not just the price. It's comprised of two of them. And now we've been introduced in a very natural way to data structures, and this is indeed the topic. So to motivate the topic furthermore, instead of is there a way, instead of passing three different parameters here, is there a way that I can pass an item that is packaged with these components, like the way I returned this, I packaged those two guys in one variable here? Is there a way that I can do the same thing instead of return a type? Is there a way that I can do that with the parameters here? Sure, why not? Let me refresh your memory with some of the very basic things that we've done at the beginning of the video lectures. we started to get values from the keyboard, and we received the price from the keyboard. Sorry, this can be like enter the price, like that, and that would be a variable that I'm gonna call a price. So far, nothing new. So far, this is something that we've done in the past. Quantity, like that. I'm going to use the input device, enter the quantity like that. And the last bit of information that I want is to get the state. So the state here is also going to be something that I am going to receive from the keyboard, like that. So if I do this in the same way, I haven't done anything different at all. And let me prove to you. I'm going to okay, let me prove to you that we are going to uncomment these guys, and now I'm gonna call the function here, the calculate. I'm gonna call it calc tax, like that, and I'm gonna call it calc tax, and I'm gonna pass these values right here, and I'm gonna pass the quantity like that, and I'm going to pass the state like that. But I will show you something. If I do this like this, I'm gonna be passing a string to this function. So what we need to do is to convert it immediately into, so the price is a float, like that. Please bear with me here. And also the quantity is an integer, and the state is a string. So I don't need to worry about anything. So this is gonna give me the item info, whether this info is about the total price or what state it came from. So let me run this. I'm gonna run this right now. We have not replaced these three different pieces by a single variable yet. But let me just work with me here. Let me just run this first. So now it's basically asking me to enter the price, and I'm gonna enter $5, and the quantity is 10, and the state is Vermont. Well, we clearly forgotten to do something very important. Here was to print the item info. And if we want to print the total, we have to access the first piece. And if we want to print the state, we have to access the second piece by index 1 versus index 0. So if I'm gonna run this one more time, and this is my price, my quantity is 10, my state is Vermont, this gives me 57 and gives me the two pieces. If I run the same thing for another state, which is the state of Massachusetts, this is $5, 10 pieces, MA is going to give me 57, and then the state of Massachusetts. Okay, good. So why, so far you haven't seen anything, and you're probably getting so anxious and probably maybe frustrated. Why is this guy not telling me how to package these three different pieces together? Because I wanted to show you now a way of passing these three different parameters and return more than one parameter and then access the pieces here. Now I wanted to show you how to package these three different parameters. If I replace it by something immediately, you won't understand where this is coming from. But now I'm gonna get an item info here, item info like that, and I'm going to package these three pieces in a tuple similar to what we did here. And here, remember when we captured the type here, and the way we signal to Python that I'm working with a tuple is to work with these parentheses. So now I'm going to pass three different items like that, and what's the third? So now I'm gonna package these three guys into one variable. if I did this immediately in one spot, you would think, okay, where is this variable getting its information from? So I wanted to show you where the information is going to come from first in a natural way. And I also wanted to show you how you can work with this information to pass it back into a function. So this function now here is taking still the three pieces. So what are we going to do? I'm going to take this guy here and I'm going to replace it by a single variable. Okay. Inside the function now, inside this function, so I know for sure now I'm passing a single complex variable that has three pieces of information, but that does not help me right now inside the function, because this function still has to work with a price and a quantity and a state. We already know that for sure. How do I work with this? Simple. The way we worked with the return type here was the same way that we're going to work with this item info here. We can say item purchased so I don't confuse you. Item purchased. Now I'm passing this item here. Now what I need for the price is to extract the price from the item that we purchased. So remember, the price is already embedded into this guy here, the item purchased, and it happens to be available or stored in the first piece. And the first piece has an index, and that index is index 0, which is exactly the first index. The first index is at index 0, always. What about the quantity? The quantity here. The quantity is also embedded into this variable here, except that it exists in a different spot. So you scoot over to the right, and then you find that you have your quantity available at index 1. All right. Now I don't have to worry about the tax rate, because the tax rate here is a local variable inside the function that I'm not passing it from outside the function, because it depends on the state, right? Now what I need is to understand what state that I'm working with. Okay, well, what part of the variable here that has a state 1, 2, 3? The third item here is my state. So now I'm going to take my complex variable here, which is a tuple, and I'm going to replace the state, but not entirely. Now I have to refer to the state by the index here. So this is my index here at index 2, and I have to make sure that that I replaced all the values here, all the variables here by the elements coming directly from the tuple, because now I know the tuple has 3 different pieces. And if I refer to anything that is not in this function, if I refer state like that, I might still have some sort of an error here, although I am not getting that error. I'm not sure why. But anyways, the point that I'm trying to make here is I replaced all the 3 pieces that I had earlier by a single variable that is called tuple, and this tuple is embedded with the elements that I'm interested in. Now, if I run this, remember, now I'm getting these pieces from the keyboard here and right here. So if you remember that these are the pieces, right? If I call, because this is going to be my this is going to be the item that I'm going to be populating, and this is still kind of a local variable here that is not exactly the one that is replacing this. I just wanted to show you that this is the variable that I'm going to be passing here, and I'm going to be working with inside the function. But the value here is not exactly always going to be the value here, because this is considered a parameter, but this is actually considered a concrete variable with 3 different values. So let me use this guy here, and instead of converting them here, why don't we just also convert them immediately after we extract them from the keyboard? So convert the price here. We intend for this variable to be a float, so let's convert it to a float. We've done this before, like that. And then we also intended for this to be an integer. like that. And now I have my item here been purchased. So I'm gonna also get rid of these three different pieces, right? And I don't need now, I don't, because now this function only takes a single variable. So I don't need to pass three different variables. I only need to pass a single one, and a single one alone. Um, as a matter of fact, I could even take these guys right here. So this is my function definition. And as you can see, this guy here, item purchased, item in store. I just want to make sure that you don't confuse the parameter name by the actual variable that you retrieve or you construct when you call in the function. So now I have item in store, item in store, and item in store, three different things, and then this variable here is going to be um, um, instantiated by the item that we actually purchase when we call the function. So that's why I moved this part of the function here, this part of the program here. Now if I'm going to run this guy, I'm going to enter the price, it's $5. The quantity is 10, and the state is Massachusetts. Let's do Arizona, for instance. And I got in 57.5 and then Arizona. And as you can see, the function now has been replaced. The function that used to take three different pieces of information is only taking one piece of information. Not entirely. It's only taken a complex placeholder. Like say when you have a dresser, and that dresser has different drawers. So think about this as a dresser that has different drawers. Okay, every drawer has a piece of information, or has a piece of clothing, or piece of items that you want. So the first one here was populated by the price, or was reserved for the price, and the second piece here that was that we received was reserved for the quantity, and the third one was reserved for the state. So we constructed them, and then we packaged them into a single variable here that we call tuple. And if we print this one more time, print the type, like I'm sorry, if we print the type of the item being purchased, this is going to show me that I indeed have something that is not a float, or is not a string, or is not an integer. It's called a tuple. And I'm gonna run this one more time for a different state. So the price, say, I don't know, let's do something more exciting than just 5. Let's do 23.7. Why not? Now we were confident that our math is good. And I'm gonna buy 3 pieces, and the state of CT, Connecticut. And indeed it's telling me you are working with a tuple here, even though we enter these 3 different pieces by ourselves, one at a time. Now we can use these 3 pieces, and we use the parentheses here to construct a more complex data structure, and this data structure can be passed. Imagine that you buy an item, and then you have every piece of information that belong to this item in a box, and then you're carrying these boxes around for one single item. It doesn't make sense. The item is an item, it's a whole unit. The price of an item is still part of the information about the item. The weight of the item is still part of the information. You cannot pull these things apart and then try to carry them around in different buckets. So it makes absolute sense now to work with some more complex data types. Eventually, when we get to object oriented, we will see that we also gonna treat the grocery items or anything that we purchase as an object, and this object has different properties, and these properties can be stored in different variables, but you're still gonna be treating the item or the object that you're working with as an entity of its own. Imagine that somebody looking at you as different type of pieces of information, looking at you by your hair color, looking at you by your height, by your profession, by the dress code that you wear if you're going if you work in military. You cannot look at people by different pieces of art. But when you look at people, you respect them. You look at them in full. You look at them as entire entities. You don't look at the different pieces that they are tagged on themselves, by their titles, by their hair color, or whatever it is. So this makes perfect sense now. I hope this example here motivated the use of data structures, and now we're gonna continue to work with data structures furthermore as we progress in the next few lectures. And clearly, the tuples here are not the only data structure that we have to work with. There are some other data structures that we will get to when we are ready. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you have any comments, and thanks for watching.